This reading is coming from the Consumer of Louisiana, Part 5, Home Solicitation Sales, uh, 353 8, uh, Consumers' Right to Cancel, except as provided in subsection E of this section, in addition to any right otherwise to revoke an offer. The consumer has a right to cancel a home solicitation sale until midnight of the third business day after the day on which the consumer signs an agreement or offer to purchase. Cancellation occurs when the consumer gives written notice of cancellation to the seller at the address stated in the agreement or offer to purchase. Notice of cancellation, if given by mail, is given when it is deposited in the mailbox properly addressed and postage prepaid. Notice of cancellation given by the consumer need not take a particular form and is sufficient if it indicates by any form of written expression or intention of the consumer not to be bound by the home solicitation sale. The consumer may not cancel a home solicitation sale if the consumer requests the seller to provide goods and services without delay because of an emergency, and one, the seller in good faith makes a substantial beginning of performance of the contract before the consumer gives notice of cancellation. And two, in the case of goods, the goods cannot be returned to the seller in substantially as good condition as when received by the consumer. F, the term home solicitation sale as used in this part shall be defined as provisions in RS 92711.1 and RS 9 y'all redact that, RS 9351620. uh 353 8.1 blank 353.9, form of agreement or offer, statement of consumer's right, compliance in a home solicitation sale. Unless the consumer requests the seller to provide goods and services without delay in emergency, the seller must present to the consumer and obtain his signature to a written agreement or offer to purchase that designates as the date of the transaction the date on which the consumer actually signs, and contains a statement of the consumer's rights that complies with subsection B of this section. B, the statement must, one, appear under conspicuous caption, consumer's right to cancel, and two, read as follows. If this agreement was solicited at your residence and you do not want the goods and services, you may cancel this agreement by mailing a notice to the seller. The notice must say that you do not want the goods and services and must be mailed before midnight of the third business day after you sign this agreement. The notice must be mailed to, insert name and mailing address of seller. If you cancel, the seller must return all of your cash down payment. Until the seller has complied with this section, the consumer may cancel the home solicitation sale by notifying the seller in any manner and by any means of his intention to cancel. Compliance with the notice requirements of the consumer's right to cancel a home solicitation sale of the Code of Federal Regulation 12, Part 226, commonly known as Regulation Z of the Consumer Credit Protection Act, 15 United States Code Section 1601 through 1681, and the Federal Trade Commission Trade Regulation providing for the cooling off period for door-to-door sales of the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 16, Part 429, shall constitute compliance with this section. Section 3540, restoration of down payment, retention of cancellation fee. Except as provided in this section, within 10 days after a home solicitation sale has been canceled or an offer to purchase revoked, the seller must tender to the consumer any payments made by the consumer and any note or other evidence of indebtedness. If the down payment includes goods traded in, the goods must be tendered in substantially as good condition as when received by the seller. If the seller fails to tender the goods as provided by this section, the consumer may elect to recover an amount equal to the trade-in allowance stated in the agreement. The seller may retain as a cancellation fee 5% of the cash price, but not exceeding the amount of the cash down payment. If the seller fails to comply with an obligation imposed by this section, or if the consumer avoids the sale on any ground independent of his right to cancel provided by the provisions of the consumer's right to cancel, or S93538, or revokes his offer to purchase, the seller is not entitled to retain a cancellation fee. Until the seller has complied with the obligations imposed by this section, the consumer may retain possession of goods delivered to him by the seller and has a privilege on the goods in his possession and control for any recovery to which he is entitled. 3541, duty of consumer, no compensation for services prior to cancellation, except as provided by the provisions and retention of goods by the consumer, or S93540D, within a reasonable time after a home solicitation sale has been canceled or an offer to purchase revoked. The consumer, upon demand, must tender to the seller any goods delivered by the seller pursuant to the sale, but he is not obligated to tender at any price other than his residence. If the seller fails to demand possession of goods within a reasonable time after residence, if the seller fails to demand possession of goods within a reasonable time after cancellation or revocation, the goods become the property of the consumer without obligation to pay for them. For the purpose of this section, 40 days is presumed to be a reasonable time. The consumer has a duty to take reasonable care of the goods in his possession before cancellation and revocation, and for the reasonable time thereafter, during which time the goods are otherwise at the seller's risk. if the seller has performed any services pursuant to a home solicitation sale prior to its cancellation, the seller is entitled to no compensation except the cancellation fee provided in this part. Consumer right to cancel mail and check solicitation sale. That's 3541.1. In addition to any right otherwise to revoke an offer, the consumer may the consumer shall have a right to cancel a mail or check solicitation sale except when a sale is made to or accepted by a consumer who has a existing loan, revolving account, or other line of credit with the party making and check solicitation sale. For purposes of this section, and mail and check solicitation sale means a consumer credit sale of a thing or a service, a consumer credit transaction, a revolving loan account, or a credit card. If such sale, transaction, loan, or the other, or, excuse me, I redact that, or the use of such credit card is contracted pursuant to a solicitation received by the consumer through the mail, through the cashing of a check by the consumer, which I'm gonna read that over. Through the cashing of a check by the consumer that has sent to him with the solicitation. B, the consumer has the right to cancel such mail and check solicitation sale for at least 60 days and receive a refund for the return and unused and undamaged goods and cancellations of unused services. Cancellation occurs when the consumer gives notice of cancellation to the person making such solicitation. 2A. Notice of cancellation given by the consumer need not to take particular form and is sufficient if it indicates by any form of expression the intention of the consumer not to be bound by the check and mail solicitation sale. Notice of cancellation, if given by mail, is given when it is deposited in the mailbox, properly addressed, and postage prepaid. The cancellation of the mail and check solicitation shall occur even if the consumer has cashed the check or utilized the credit, loan account, or credit card. In addition, such a check shall contain the following language as a conspicuous caption. Warning: the cashing of this check will enroll you in a program or a loan or will cause you to be bound to repay the loan or purchase goods or services which may cost you additional money. This totally different. Home solicitation of aged person. Insurance. That's it for that one. And that's it for the reading on home solicitation sales, consumer right to counsel.